Hello and welcome. A little over a year ago, I started this channel and I titled it How to Solve All the Problems of the World Simply by Loving Yourself Enough to Listen. In the beginning, I stated that I know how this story goes because it's already been written. And I said that everybody else is the one writing it. I did not have a plan or a script. I simply knew what to do after each time I meditated. I knew that the only truths in this world are positive, and if I could wake others up, they would be able to recognize it as well. Since the beginning of this channel, I've gone through extreme transformations, psychologically, physically, and ultimately spiritually. If you choose to continue watching my story, I will teach you how I started to what could be perceived as predict the future, as well as I was able to do what some would consider miracles. For example, how I developed manifestation abilities, how I was able to do astral projection, and how to find all lies or non-truths, if you will. I learned how to heal myself and how to heal others as well. I learned ultimately how I could bring out physical, psychological, and spiritual changes in others simply by speaking or ultimately touching. I will teach you how I achieved cognitive empathy, which in essence is having more complete and accurate knowledge about the contents of another person's mind than even they have. I'll teach you how I became cognizant of the 5 dimensions of the universe, which basically all things in the universe revert back to one. I'll teach you theistic evolution, the truths between God and science, as well as divine essence, which is the spiritual meaning of life, and religious synchronicity, which is the connection between all religions, how they all tie together, and how they all are based off one principle. As I attempt to teach you, your mind will have a tendency to view me as intimidating to your religious beliefs, or delusional, belief in something that isn't true. It might even view me as having a mental disorder. But please allow yourself to recognize that I'm only trying to help others find the positive truths within your existence. I have nothing to gain, and I only ask that you allow yourself to listen through your inner self. Don't let your mind take control through your thoughts. I do not consider myself above anybody in the world, and ultimately I don't feel I'm below anybody else in the world. I simply accept that I am what I am. I have found peace within myself, and ultimately isn't that what everybody's goal is? I will not intentionally bring negativity towards myself or others. Before I begin, it's important to point out truly how to listen and exactly what listening is. I've learned that if we do not hear the words in our thoughts, in our mind, then we are not truly listening. If you think about it, how can we defend our opinion if we do not truly listen, but instead we're thinking about how we will respond. And the truth is, inner dialogue frequently occurs in only about 30 to 50% of people. It is also important to recognize that for our mind to protect us, it always looks at danger first. It recognizes danger by what we have been taught to perceive as negative. To speed up the ability to find the truths, I have utilized dimensional characteristics. I've changed the style and the color of crucial words to help the mind recognize the truths and not refer back to the defensive mode, if you will. Basically judging me, trying to find anything negative or anything harmful in what I'm saying. Now you'll notice in the future that I've changed words to red. That represents danger, negative, sin. I've changed words to yellow that, demonstrate caution, a moment to reflect, when you need to choose, or when you necessarily have a choice. Blue words are neutral, descriptive, directional, to help your mind understand, in essence, where I'm going with this. Now, white words are truths that you know within your soul that this is true, that all of us in our existence we can agree upon. And ultimately, it's the words within consciousness. Now let's begin. This is part 2 of how I healed myself from PTS and I gained consciousness while doing so. On December 25th of 2023, I spent most of the day tattooing on a client that was struggling with depression and was having suicidal thoughts. During the 8-hour session, to break up the silence, I explained in detail all the deep revelations that I had been having since I returned back from Ukraine. I've found that when I am tattooing, I am incapable of lying without actually stopping to think. Because when I'm tattooing, I'm putting so much of myself into exactly what I'm doing. My motor skills, making sure I'm giving perfect, clear lines, and seeing things from a dimensional perspective. Now, if you think about it, if we do not lie, we never have to worry about what, in essence, we say. Or how Mark Twain put it, if you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything. The revelations I've reflected on and how I perceived them were, for example, existence versus experience, normal or physical, whether or not it's destiny or whether or not we're making a choice. For example, existence, the fact or state of living, versus experience, observation of facts or events, how we perceive it. To confront the fundamental questions of meaning, what's the meaning of life, or are we truly free to make our own decision, or what are we basing our truths on, the authenticity, and how we have to try to figure out a way to do this in an often chaotic and unpredictable world. What is pain? Are we self-inflicting pain due to our perception? For example, is it psychological from trauma we've experienced? Is it spiritual from guilt that we've been taught? Or is it actually physical pain that we're feeling? The truth is, pain is constructed entirely in the brain, in the mind. Neuroreceptors can also activate on their own, creating the feeling of pain, even when there is no actual cause. Is our pain emotional or physical? For example, emotional. Is it coming from how we perceive our relationships? Are we perceiving a relationship from turning out differently than how it actually turns out from the truth, the reality of it? Or from a physical perspective, how our perception of pain is influenced by, for example, my genetic makeup, emotions, personality, and lifestyle. It is also influenced by our past experiences. What is true forgiveness to us? If we intentionally choose to let go of resentment and anger, then ultimately that's forgiveness. The only reason we would not choose to forgive is because we choose to feel sorry for ourselves, or to prevent from experiencing it again, to prevent the negative vibrations, if you will. What I've learned from my drug use. I learned ultimately that it silenced the emotion that I ultimately was feeling. Isn't that why all of us would use drugs? Is to quiet the voice within our mind. It relieved pain, whether it be physical or emotional. It changed how my mind processed. Now, I realize that the issue with drugs is not that what they are made of, but it's how they are administered or prescribed. Truly, the right amount balances out the chemicals within our brains. But I also reflected that instead of using drugs, I found benefits from meditating. That it reduced my psychological pain from anxiety, depression, feeling alone. It helped me focus. It reduced my desire for drugs. And improved my ability to truly have deep sleep and rest. I talked about the connection between spirituality and religion, but how religion tends to create division. I then reflected on how I realized that all religions were desiring the same thing. If we look past the emotions, the guilt, the judgment, and the worship, the common truth is within all of our soul. I reflected that all spiritual practices had similar traits. If you think about it, they all have beliefs and teachings, rituals, practices, events, celebrations, leadership and rules, customs and traditions, sacred places, signs and symbols, sacred writings, and beliefs in supernatural and cosmologies. The same as pagan and magic practices. Because of my prior experience as a mortician and funeral director, I've reflected on the development of funeral rituals over time. I question when we became so fearful of death. If we believe in our spiritual practices, Why would we be scared of death? I then casually said, the truth is, we fear to lose our comforts. We fear that our spiritual beliefs might possibly be wrong, and that what happens when our mind experiences fear, we get defensive. Our brain stops hearing what somebody is saying and starts protecting itself. Now, please recognize that I had been tattooing for 8 hours, randomly just regurgitating at the mouth, not putting any thought into what I was saying, strictly talking from my heart. But when I finished tattooing for the day, my client, that goes by they, calmly asked if I was willing to watch a quick little cartoon with them. Now, this client had not said anything the whole time I was talking. It was just calm and listened to everything I said. As we started watching this cartoon that's called Midnight Gospel, happens to be broadcasted on a podcast into outer space. And when I started listening, after about 5 minutes, my jaw dropped and I almost puked. Word for word was repeated in the cartoon from what I had just been reflecting on over the last 8 hours. Now, my client said the interesting part was every person that they had asked to watch the cartoon had the same reaction as I had. And each time they watched the cartoon, they heard something different. Please allow yourself to continue to watch my story. I promise you that if you do, you'll be very thankful that you did. If your mind has a hard time understanding what I am saying, please give us the benefit of the doubt and ask me a question. You can do so through comments, or you can send me an email if you prefer a more private setting. In the description below is a link to the tattoo I was working on during this session. Please allow yourself to look at the tattoo from a 3D perspective and notice how it changes. And watch it to start come to life. The good within me loves the good within you. And thank you for listening.